the microphone so we can hear you,
No, but
Norma.
you know how to do this. You know,
Yes,
yeah.
So,
I
Norma,
definitely
when you were
was.
in Puerto Rico, you were having some fun, but did you also vote? There was an election in Puerto Rico. When you were
That's
down there.
right. I think this is the seventh or the ninth election for plebiscite that the residents of Puerto Rico go to the polls every 3 or 4 years to decide whether the island of Puerto Rico is going to stay as it is, status quo, if it's going to become the 51st state, or if it's going to be independent.
Meaning
And-
that it wouldn't be part of the United States.
Right.
It'd be its own nation.
It would be it's a republic.
Uh-huh. Hey, could you get real close to the mic, Norma?
Oh yeah,
Sorry about
it
that.
would be a republic. So basically independent, able to trade with everybody else. But I don't think the United States would let it do it because it has too much investment.
Right now,
in it.
right now it's a colony of the United States.
That's right, but they don't say that it's a colony, right?
What do they say?
Commonwealth.
Commonwealth.
Right.
So, Norma, when these elections take place, they don't have any legal binding, right? So they don't. Just if they vote, that doesn't mean it happens, right?
That's exactly one of the reasons why the PPD, Partido Progresista Demócrata, Partido Popular, which is considered like the Democratic end of the party, all of them refused to vote. They did not vote at all.
Why?
So if you because they don't want Puerto Rico to become a state. The people who the governor he stands for the PNP, that he's in that party. He's the one that is interested. It's that party that wants it to become a 51 state.
Now, what's the reason some people feel they want it to become a state?
Because they would have first of all, the Puerto Ricans in the island are not allowed to vote for the president of the United States.
Really?
No, yep, they can't.
Oh,
I know they don't vote for. They don't get their own senators.
Yep.
They don't get their own Congress people. But they don't. So Harry, I didn't know that.
Yeah, they don't get to vote for the presidency.
So, and they don't get any.
But even so, for the Democratic Party, they do send their own delegates, even though they don't get to.
Right.
Well,
So it's like
they're
DC.
They're part of the
They have a
primary.
voice, but they don't have a vote.
Yeah, that's weird.
Right, they have a voice and they don't have a vote. And it's true, they do participate in the primary
Yeah.
process and they calculate the votes, but it doesn't really mean anything. It's very similar to Washington DC, the District of Columbia. They didn't have the right to vote either. It
And they
wasn't
still don't
until-
have. They only have an observer in the Congress. They don't have their own Congress people who actually.
And I remember when I
Make
was in the
decisions.
League of Women Voter Convention last year, that's one of the things that the League of Women Voters want to accomplish. They are supporting that the people from the District of Columbia be allowed to vote for the President of the United States and that it's counted.
And there are people in DC who want statehood.
And I, for instance,
I don't see how you can argue against statehood for DC. I mean, Harry, you'd be the only person here who might, right? What would be the reason not to have statehood in
For
DC?
DC, I wouldn't see any reason. Just like I wouldn't see any reason for Puerto Rico, especially, what the United States and Europe, the Europeans have put Puerto Rico through. So, and I know the reason people want to vote, want statehood now for Puerto Rico because they've been against it for so long. And now they're just hoping that the United States swallows the debt.
Right, because Puerto Rico went
Become a
bankrupt.
state, yes.
So now, Norma, did you vote in this election?
no.
Come on, you didn't do a New Haven. You didn't get to cast your vote a couple times.
No, I have to be registered to vote over
You
there. And
need
I'm
to go-
So they had it-
I'm only registered to vote in New Haven, Connecticut.
I thought you were a little more creative than that,
You have to
Norma.
register.
And now
Don't
it-
you just have to
but
be
you know-
Puerto Rican?
Talking about voting, a lot of people don't understand the ramifications if you vote. And if you're not registered to vote and if you illegally take and you vote, that's very serious.
And that's why
the
voter fraud doesn't
consequences
happen
would be
very
hard.
often.
It's
So
very
Norma,
serious.
there was this plebiscite. It was an overwhelming vote in favor of statehood, correct?
No, it's really, if you do the numbers.
What was the result?
If you do the numbers and you calculate the number of people that did not.
No, I
vote-
understand that. I was going to get to that.
Oh,
But the result of the election was a landslide for statehood, but everybody who was against statehood did not vote.
right,
And in the end, it has no bearing. It's just expressing some will. But let me ask you this, and tell me if I'm wrong about this, Harry. I think you and Norma, your parents both came to the U.S. from Puerto Rico, and that until recently, the Latino community in New Haven was primarily Puerto Rican. Now it's from all over Latin America. How would you two have voted in this plebiscite? Because again, the options on the table were status quo, it's a colony, become a state or secede. You know, they're doing this in Scotland
Well,
and other places around you
the,
secede from
the
these
secession
empires.
part doesn't make no sense, right? The Puerto Ricans would give up their citizenship in the United States. That would be insane,
Well, they have their own country
and it would be insane to give up the citizenship.
because you think it wouldn't be a
of the United
viable
States.
enough economy.
It wouldn't be a viable economy. They'd still be in debt, and you give up all your privilege of being an American. Insane.
And contracts, government aid. But what about the other two questions, statehood or
Well,
status quo?
statehood, yes. I've been wanting Puerto Rico to become a state, but the problem is that it's hard because the people financially aren't ready to become a state, to go through what normal states go through and actually have to pay in.
So don't they pay income tax?
I-
Or they don't pay income tax?
Puerto Ricans pay more than income tax. Because I just went over here, they have 3 different types of taxes that they're charging you.
See, I love when Norma gets mad. She's mad. Someone has to pay taxes.
So I mean, I think I was a little kid when Alaska and Hawaii came on board. So like, what was anybody alive, and what was the difference in terms of what their
It was long
finances
before
looked
you
like
were in.
and-
See,
So
one of the reasons why I am not in favor of statehood is because of what happened to the people of Hawaii when they became a state. Prior to
That's
Hawaii
it.
becoming a state, a lot of Hawaiians owned their own land, and they had their own culture, they had everything. But then, as soon as it became a state, they lost all their land because now they come in, they survey the land, they charge all these taxes. So the farmers lost the Hawaiian farmers lost everything. And now very few Hawaiians own their own land.
That was 1959 when
Right.
Hawaii
Yes, it
became a
was.
state.
And that's what I mean. The people themselves aren't ready for statehood. There has to be a way. I don't want to sound like a liberal, but there has to be.
because that would be the worst thing ever,
That would
right?
be the worst.
It's so interesting, Harry, because this really doesn't seem to me so liberal and conservative.
Yeah.
This really seems to be one of those wonderful questions that don't have to do with whether you're a liberal or conservative. It's like, what's the best way for people to be represented?
Actually, yes, and also,
And Alaska was also 1959, but
well, I also think
Yeah,
it's
definitely.
sort of a reparation in a form because
Like, how do you compensate people if you're
How do
going
you
to
com-
change? Like, if they're going to lose their land, how
Exactly.
do you compensate them?
how do
But
you
Alaska
compensate?
seemed to have a sweet deal with all of the oil and stuff because people who
Yeah.
move to Alaska make money.
yeah. I don't get why U.S. should be an empire. Why should we control Puerto Rico? Why should we control Hawaii? These places aren't even contiguous to the United States.
But you know what?
You're thinking colonialism.
Yeah, it is colonialism.
This isn't.
Are they thinking national defense?
They made us
Well,
citizens
actually,
in 1917.
Strategically, Puerto Rico is in the
Yes.
optimal position, and when I say we as a Puerto Rican, we should get something out of that, and this is the thing that it gets really hard because I talk in a reparation way, but I don't believe in entire reparations. But Puerto Rico has been stripped of everything. There's a reason it's called Puerto Rico. It's a rich port. Okay, and
it's bankrupt.
It's bankrupt, and it's
So
been stripped
statehood
of
hasn't
everything.
been great for it then.
Because it seems to have all the benefits without the
I mean,
actual
lack of
title.
statehood, yeah.
It's a double-edged sword.
And do you feel like the current folks in leadership, if Puerto Rico were to go down the statehood route, wouldn't just say, "We're going to wipe out this debt, but you get to be a state"? Congratulations.
That's the wishful thinking of the people who voted to be, a state. But that's
I don't
not
think that's
reality.
wishful thinking because if I were voting to be a state, I would also want you to wipe out my debt, but I'd also not want you to steal my land.
But the American mainland will not allow Puerto Rico, even no matter how many votes we cast, to become a state. Because first of all, you cannot add more congressmen and more senators. So
Why not?
therefore, based on the Constitution,
No.
you cannot add more.
You can. The Republicans might not let it become a state because Puerto Rico would be
Democratic.
right. 2 more congressmen, Democrat Congressman.
That's not
Two more
true.
senators
That is
for
not
sure.
true because first of all, in Puerto Rico, there's just as many Republicans as there are Democrats.
The truth
They're
is,
50-50.
the Republicans would have to, instead of trying to win those votes, which they could do through culturally conservative issues,
Mhm.
the Republicans, like the Democrats, would rather use their power to protect the power they have now rather than have to have a more democratic society where they go win the votes by making a better argument.
Look at the hedge funds that the debt that Puerto Rico has. They don't want to restructure it. They just want to keep strangling the island. And what's happening is, I really believe that they're doing displacement of people, which in a way I'm kind of happy that Puerto Rico is going through the financial crisis that it's going through, because what's happening is now in Puerto Rico, 95%, a large percentage, graduate from the universities. So now what's happening is they're being forced to come in to the mainland, either to the south, and thank goodness a lot of them are now coming to the north, because otherwise, it's true what Paul said, we were becoming the minority of the Latinos within the minority. But now with all these Puerto Ricans coming in and they're all educated, and a lot of them, the ones that come from the city, they speak English just as well as we do.
Yeah,
And the state, I mean, our city is about to make a play for Puerto Rican.
That is,
educators.
Marquisa just figured out why I brought up the subject. But first, I'm going to remind people that they're listening to Pundit Friday at WNHH Radio, 103.5 FM, live streamed at newhavenindependent.org. It's your good, not your bad, Marquisa. Thank you for that transition. You got the segue. Thank you, Marquisa. So, Norma, when you were down in Puerto Rico, did you happen to notice any poachers or spies from the New Haven Board of Education?
I know,
They have on t-shirts.
they went over there for a whole week.
Were
and
you on a flight with a
interviewed-
whole bunch of people from New Haven?
No, they interviewed one of the individuals that went over there to interview, because they had 45 interviews set. Every hour and the hour they were interviewing for those days that they were there.
Well, tell us who they are and what they're interviewing for.
These are educators. I guess they're directors of the bilingual program, because there's a serious lack of bilingual teachers here in the mainland. And so they went to Puerto Rico, and they were very surprised because they had previously in the 80s gone to Puerto Rico and brought teachers. And at that time, they really weren't bicultural or bilingual, for that matter. They were more monolingual than bilingual. But at that time, they needed them, so they used whatever they had. Now, those teachers are all very bilingual, to a point that they speak English with hardly any accent at all. So that's like really.
So let's tell people what's
surprising.
going on. There is a race going on among poachers in Puerto Rico. While their government's falling apart and the school system's falling apart and underfunded, and their pensions are in trouble. It's called a Ponzi scheme, or the pensions legalized Ponzi scheme, which actually is going to happen in other states too, because apparently a lot of pension funds are tied up with hedge funds that have been taking big fees out, but actually getting terrible returns. But in any case, that's a side thing. So Puerto Rico's falling apart. So all these cities, not just New Haven, Dallas, Houston, Las Vegas is Clark County, Oklahoma City, Buffalo, they're all sending down people because they have this problem, which is that we need bilingual teachers and they cost more. Right? So New Haven, the Board of Ed has a budget crisis. The state pulled millions of dollars, some of it right in the middle of the year that was already approved. They've been scrambling at the Board of Ed how to make millions of dollars up, some of which they already told they were getting. At the same time, they have to hire 95 teachers, and some of them are bilingual teachers who cost more. But if they're desperate in Puerto Rico, they might not cost more. So as Norma said, these might be some of the best
So it
qualified.
doesn't matter if they are picking sugarcane or
Right.
teaching. They're going to get exploited.
Now, not exploiting, because I would argue, Babs, that you get paid well as a teacher and you get good benefits. But what bilingual teachers got because of their market position was they got more than other teachers. So now all he said, he's saying, hey, we can pay them the regular price and not the extra price. We'll take advantage of their misery. So they're all New
And how
Haven.
is that not exploitation? That's what exploitation is.
Yeah, I would argue that if in the end they're
because they're living a little better.
no, it's exploitation of an opportunity
Mhm.
and someone else's misery,
Mhm.
but it's not bringing them here to be in non-union jobs.
Mhm.
I mean, it's a pretty sweet. My daughter's a school teacher, which makes me so happy. Not only because I love that she teaches school, but she's got like a pension. She makes more money at 27 than I have in my life, pretty much. You know, pretty close. She has health benefits, so she gets paid decently, not tons, but she gets paid really decently for doing important work. But in any case, that's aside. So in any case, New Haven sent 3 staffers down there, recruiters to Puerto Rico. They heard Norma Rodriguez-Reyes was going. They said, we got to follow. This is our opportunity. And as Norma said, they're closing 184 schools in Puerto Rico. I mean, a lot of people are going to be out of jobs. So in fact, it is kind of good if they show them a new opportunity, right?
How are they going to, how does that work? How do you close
Because you're gonna go from having like this educated population and all these talented people, and you're gonna close 148 schools, and you're gonna go back to not necessarily having that. That seems like a bad investment. On
So
America's
200
part.
people in Puerto Rico applied for these bilingual slots. And I'll say that, yeah, Babs is right. We're taking advantage of an opportunity or exploiting it. But in the realm of exploitation, like the whole sugar industry where people are basically slaves, if someone's losing their job in Puerto Rico and the schools are closing, I'm kind of glad they get an opportunity to help us out with something too, and they get a pretty decent pay and we
because
get better
that's how
bilingual.
white people think like
So
that.
tell me how black person thinks. Tell me how black. All right,
Either way, this all sounds like
This is,
all right. Tell me more about that, Babs. This is great.
because it's just this mindset. Well, see, look, this will be better in the long run for you, without even thinking about.
and it's better for them,
For
not
them.
better for Puerto Rico.
Right.
Right.
It might be a little better, but it's not better because in a better world, if this is
They would
happening,
be able to be in Puerto Rico teaching and doing
exactly,
what they do.
that would be an option. And if they like wanted to come and teach on the mainland, like they'd be paid a premium for their skills. Like I think the biggest thing that I think is so messed up is that people come to our country and have these extra skills and they don't actually get paid for them. Like if you're an American who can speak another language, and of course if you're Puerto Rican, you're American, so you can speak Spanish. But like if you are just a regular old Joe American who happens to go learn another language, you can get paid so much more money because of your language skills. But if you're somebody who if that's your native language, you might not get paid for it. Like people, like in our business, I don't think Latino reporters get paid more because they speak Spanish. But the company's taking advantage of what they can do, but they don't pay them any extra money for that.
So the way you're schooling me here is, the way with from a black person, white person, this is great, is that the best solution would be if the people in Puerto Rico got more freedom of choice. That instead of the United States taking advantage, the mainland, of a crisis in a colony that is operating without rights of the United States empire, that instead of us taking advantage of a bad economy there where people have fewer options and bringing them here for our own benefit, we should stop exploiting Puerto Rico, enable it to thrive so that people there can decide on their own. We can make a living where we want to live and have good schools, or if we then choose to come to the mainland, we will have more bargaining power and get paid that premium for what we're doing. Is that what you guys are telling me?
Yes, we do that
Thank
with
you.
wars. When we fight wars and we win, or what we considered winning, we go in and buff up infrastructure.
That was the
Go
Marshall
and-
Plan. I don't know if we still do
we
that. Yeah.
I mean, but
We should, yeah.
I think we do. I think even though we don't say we do that anymore,
Oh, no,
still
we do it.
We do it.
We
We
go
do it on the
build
back end.
bridges. We build schools.
But that's
for
after we
people.
bombed the heck out of it. I mean, look what we did to Iraq in
But that's
one
what I
day in the
mean. My
first day of that
point
war.
is
Any rebuilding there is just making
there
up
is
for
the will
destroyed.
to do
And
it.
Well,
if
here's the reality. When they took over Puerto Rico, they treated us like crap. Okay? They treated us like crap for... Let me tell you.
Landed.
Let me not just start with the United States. But Puerto Rico's been exploited by the Europeans forever. You know, and everybody, it's like Puerto Rico's a lost story. You know, Puerto Rico's been through so much and nobody cares. And it's like now they look at Puerto Rico like if they have a handout.
Yeah.
But it's
Wow.
also the same story though, right? So Puerto Rico's in all this trouble and we're closing schools. We're gonna exploit the fact that we're closing schools by taking advantage of all these teachers who are gonna need jobs. What investments are we putting into Puerto Rico? We're still underdeveloping Puerto Rico or making sure that it's always it's never going to recover from all the exploitation because we're constantly taking. We're not giving anything back.
And when we talk about exploitation, let's not forget the scientific exploitation of those people, of
The birth control pill.
with birth control and all other kinds of
And the pharmaceuticals all there.
experiments that they've done.
Because
in
Puerto Rico,
Vieques and all
Puerto
these
Rico's
other
story
places.
is the Native American story. Okay, when the Europeans landed there, they slaughtered Puerto Ricans, killed our men, and then they had African slaves. That this is why Puerto Rico goes from white to black Puerto Ricans, because we're mixed with Europeans, African slaves, Indians. So that's the story of Puerto Rico that nobody tells. It's like I'm telling you, it's like.
Did someone slip Harry an anti-Trump pill on his way?
He got all Puerto Rican answers. He's like, I'm ready for this.
Harry, you okay, man? Harry,
No,
you all right?
He's like, y'all gonna get this Puerto Rican story today.
I'm a little worried about Harry.
There was a professor.
I love it. It's good.
A professor in Stanford University that did a research, okay, on DNAs, and it was published, I think it was last year or the year before last, okay, that the Puerto Ricans have the perfect DNA. And it has to do with the percentage of white that we have from the Europeans, the percentage of blacks, because we have Africans from Africa, not from other places. They came from Africa, because there's still sections in Puerto Rico that, and that's why you'll see somebody blue black and doesn't speak a word of English. And at one time, people were really fascinated with that, because and then you have the Indians, and the Chinese when they came to build the railroads, because a lot of we call some Puerto Ricans, we call them Chino, and it's because they have the Chinese look, and it was because a lot of Chinese, when they came to build the railroad, they stayed there. But you know what? In the 1920s or 30s, they took 5,000 Puerto Ricans and they shipped them to Hawaii to do the farms.
Yeah.
And the coqui, which is the little frog that's like the mascot of Puerto Rico. The only other place that it has been able to survive is in Hawaii. And yet, you know that they exterminate them because of the sound that they make, the coqui noise at nighttime. The people from Hawaii can't take it, so they exterminate them. In Puerto Rico, if you even think about killing one of them, it's like, oh my, it's like doing the eagle of the United States. It's like messing with the eagle of the United States.
Yeah,
Right,
and
well,
you
you're
know what? And wait, and that's an important story that she talked about. Of Puerto Ricans going to Hawaii, because I have a friend who was a writer who was writing a book on this. Maricel Vera is writing a book on how Puerto Ricans were and they purposely chose Puerto Ricans because they thought that their sensitivity to the climate would lend themselves to being workers in Hawaii. So that's a pretty important piece.
My wife, for Christmas, I got her the DNA test, and her DNA goes from the African Congo all the way to the Indians in Peru. Okay? That's who we are. That's who we are. And everybody ignores it. It's a sad, it's sad what they're doing in Puerto Rico right now.
All right, but it's not sad that we get to tell the truth here on Pundit Friday and WNHH Radio, your home for community radio at 103.5 FM, live streamed in New Haven and Bend, Oregon. We got Babs Earls Ivy, Harry Jones, Nora Rodriguez, and Marquisha Ricks here with me. I'm your host, Paul Bass, on our weekly show, which is my favorite way to top off the week.
Thank you for the
Be in
opportunity.
the studio to be with you
Bass.
folks.
Thank you for the platform, Paul B.
Yeah, I need more pay, but I'm bilingual.
So wait, are you thanking me for making a business? Wait,
money.
are you thanking me for making a business opportunity available for you rather than helping to nurture, as Sam Ross Lee would say, the plantation of black media, right?
Oh, is that what he says?
Remember he's mad that it's
yes.
here on the white guys. He's got a point.
Whatever.
Well, my point is, what happens at the Board of Ed? So think of these poor bilingual teachers. If they come here thinking everything's good, what if they show up at a Board of Education meeting? Can you imagine how they're going to feel about the job? So this week was a typical week. Our reporter, Chris Speak, just was amazed because he's new at the Independent. He's covering the schools. He was one of the first meeting. He called me up. He said, I can't believe how nasty everybody was when they got up and started yelling at everybody at the public comment section.
To be reading the story.
He wrote it. So he wrote a story. Just, it's the kind of thing when something happens every week, you just think it's the norm, and someone new comes in and looks at it and said, I can't believe this goes on. So, of course, they had the public session where everyone gets up. You're supposed to talk for 3 minutes. Remember 3 minutes? So one of the people first to get up is always Reverend Boise Kimber, who literally goes for sometimes 30 minutes and tells them they're not allowed to stop him and they're too wimpy to stop him, right? So he's yelling at them because he's mad because they didn't let him open a charter boys school and get money out of it when he has no education background, and that didn't even understand what a charter school was, and there was no reason it had to be a charter school, right? So he's still mad. So guess how he starts insulting them, accusing them of everything. You all do nothing, and your special education department sucks. Like, oh no, somebody else. He's yelling, talking. He's yelling, talking, telling them they're corrupt, calling for like investigations into them, reading them articles from Bridgeport about how they should have still supported school, which is now a dead issue. And he goes on and on. They tell him he's out of order because he's talking way past time. He says, "No, you're all out of order." And then somebody else stands up and says, "You all do nothing." And then someone else says, "Your special education department sucks. You guys are not doing the right things. I'm beyond pissed off." So everyone's standing up telling them they're corrupt, dumb, and worst of all, they call them politicians. And like, I think we all in this room would say it's so important the public get to address the board and tell them, you know, when they think they're wrong and bring problems to light. But this has been out of hand for a long time.
Yeah, it's been out of
So
hand.
Babs,
Here's a fundraiser. Everybody put on gloves and go in the middle of the room.
so Babs,
We do
now
have
Babs,
the
you've spent more
documents.
time probably in this room, except for maybe Norma, sitting on boards and commissions and long, boring meetings and trying to have a civil public process when people break the rules and disrupt and try to take advantage. What would you have been like if you were in charge of the Board of Ed when this goes on? How tough would you be? What rules would you set? And how would you allow this public discussion to take place in a civil, productive way?
I think I would have to be. I'd be very hard because and then I would have to appeal to their better angels. This has been going on for a very long time. This has been a very
And it's
contentious.
disparaging to people who work for this Board of Ed.
It's been a very contentious board
But this isn't even the
Before
board.
elected.
This isn't even the board. This is the public
this
that
is
comes
the
up and
public. And I think, you know what? I think if people felt like they could go to the schools where they're having the problems with and have honest goodness dialogue with the communities, with schools within the communities that they are having trouble with, I think it would cut down on people showing up to the Board of Ed. I think what happens is people.
well, I'm glad they show up. It's how they behave when they're there.
Well, yes, because I think the level of frustration is high.
So, Babs, once again, you're really pointing out a root of the problem that I think I wasn't paying attention to. I think you're right. I think a lot of times people feel like the individual schools, like some they think are great and really responsive. I know when you go to Common Ground with charter school, you feel you can really talk to people what's going on there and deal with issues. I mean, we want people on the Board of Ed, but you're right that maybe part of this frustration, I don't think that explains Reverend Kimber.
And
Going
he
there when he's got an
doesn't, There are
agenda.
like two different groups of people who kind of show up.
But Babs got a really good point. What
She
if
does
they
have
do
really
a better
good point, 'cause It
job?
reminds me of there was a woman, I can't recall her name at the time, but I know the few times that I was covering the Board of Education, there was a woman who had been working for I think 2 years to get like a better policy around asthma and school nurses and that type of thing, the administering of medications and things. But she'd been working for 2 years and she felt like nobody was hearing her, so she kept showing up to Board of Ed meetings to think like, okay, I've tried everything else, and now I have to come to you and talk. And she was never disrespectful. But I've even seen teachers come and say, like, for instance, the teachers from high school, Creed High, who would come and say, look, we need a school leader. Like, they didn't have a principal for a minute, and they're like, we need y'all to do this. So like all this other noise, we need you
Like
to
if they
fix
had
this
an
problem.
ombudsman office so that people felt like, you know, their concerns weren't just dangling in the wind. And I think that's very frustrating, particularly when education is so tantamount to the success of your child's future. That's what we believe. We believe that. But when parents or advocates of children are stopped before they even get to the gate, it makes people frustrated. And so their only recourse is to show up at these Board of Ed meetings and just show out.
So let me ask you some forward-looking then solutions. Do we want people to be able to speak at the Board of Ed at their main meeting so that we encourage people to show up, watch the decisions being made, participate, but just much more strictly enforce the 3-minute rule and rules of civility and maybe just like sit on Reverend Kimber? Or do you want to have a special, like other boards, let's say the Board of Alders, have their public hearings in committee? So they have a main meeting where they debate, or the U.S. Congress, right? They'll bring experts to testify, whatever you try to get on there. Should there be instead a Vladimir Putin does once a year with 4 hours of chosen people. He did less today, I think it was. But should the Board of Ed instead have committee meetings where people come and raise stuff, or is that shunting them out of the spotlight? Should we still have? I think we would all agree it needs to be a better run public process. You have to enforce, just like we do in our comments section. There's certain things you can't say. You don't get to shut everybody else up and dominate it and break the rules the way Reverend Kimber does. But maybe we do want to encourage everyone to come and speak at the full meetings themselves, but just more closely. Or is it still legitimate in government to have other fora in which you can do it, like special committee meetings or not special, regular committee meetings? What do you think the solution is?
I mean,
I'm as someone who attends a lot of public meetings, I'm a fan of the Board of Alders, like, because you can tailor it. You can have very specific conversations, like we're going to talk about charter schools, and specifically about Boise Kimber's charter school, and everybody who wants to come talk about that can come talk about that issue. Obviously, the Board of Ed is a lot smaller, and again, you're asking people to devote a lot of time, a lot of volunteer hours to do additional things, but they do already have other committees.
They haven't.
In the Board of Education.
Those don't meet quite as much.
They meet at like during the day, like very odd times where most people might be at work. So you're asking people to commit to meeting at times that are more convenient for the public. So it's a lot of work.
I think it's 5:30, but it's like finance and administration.
I think they have some meetings at 2 sometimes.
Okay. So Marquise, it sounds to me like you're proposing to do what the Board of Alders does, which have committee meetings about specific topics, and everyone who cares about that topic can come speak.
And people can like submit their topic at the regular public meeting. They wouldn't get to speak on it, but because here's the thing for me about the public meeting. You're there to conduct certain business, right? Like you have to actually get some things done. You have to vote about personnel matters and things of that nature. Also, it's not a back and forth process, right? So the people are just blasting the board. And I think that's fine. It's fine. If you want to blast those guys, you can do that at a different forum. And not to create a situation where they get to blast you back, but y'all have to have a dialogue. Like they can ask questions. They can dig a little deeper, like what's behind this issue. Like sometimes people are just taking notes. I think sometimes people just rolling their eyes. I'm like, oh my God, not again.
And it's hard in public.
After a while, you can't hear it when all the time. And then there are people at with the whole Garth Harris firing. There were people who had a legitimate agenda. They were like, my job here is to get this guy fired, and I won't be back after he's fired. I don't have anything else to say after that. So
I guess the other challenge to me too is how do you moderate public debate when you have people who want to disrupt and aren't going to follow the rules? Yeah. Like how do you deal with Reverend Kimber?
Do you put them out? Like I don't know. Is that too far? You say if you can't respect the rules,
if for years you insist on talking longer,
Well, I mean, you got to strengthen the rules that are in place.
They tried that,
and if you have to cut.
That's true. They did try that. Marquise is right.
Too. And he just keeps talking. He's like, he said the quote is, "I'm a Baptist preacher. I don't need a mic." So I hate to say it, but the only way to stop somebody like that is to be like, you have to get on my meeting.
Well, we do have 4 mics.
Security to escort you out.
We do have 4 mics here at Pundit Friday.
We do.
And a big platform where we talk about the week's news on WNHH Radio, your home for community radio, 103.5 FM, live stream at NewHavenIndependent.org. Well, amid all the noise, there's also a lot of joy being shouted in New Haven these weeks. Summer starts, which has become, summer season's become just such a fun time.
And drink hot chocolate in June.
There's so much going on in New Haven every week, fun stuff to do. You can't even get to it all. And especially now, we're starting with the Arts and Ideas Festival. Now, you guys have already hit a couple of those, right? What have you guys hit so far?
Oh, my God. Last night we were at Black Girl, the linguistic play.
What is that?
Camille Brown choreographed a play celebrating Black girlhood into womanhood. Seriously. And she wasn't here for the white gays about it either. Meaning, when white folks were talking about it, she reminded them that this was deliberately Black. And
where was this and what was it? A dance performance? A play?
It was a dance performance.
It's at the University Theater.
Yes.
And it was well attended. It was so packed in there. And I was very happy to see young Black and brown girls in the audience, and they got to ask some questions. And afterwards, because there was a talk back afterwards. And as Bab said, she described what she attempted to do on stage using things like hand games, which are kind of universal to girls. Even though I was telling Paul earlier today, when I was a kid, that wasn't limited to girls. Like my younger male cousins jumped in and played those games. They knew all the sing-song rhymes and all of that sort of thing.
Yeah.
And you know, I have a special place in my heart for double dutch because I'm a black girl born in Philadelphia, not raised in Philadelphia, so I can't double dutch to save my life. But I always loved it. I always loved the rhythm of it and the little songs that go with it, and she captured all of that beautifully. And it's a part of blackness, a part of black womanness, and a part of girlness that we don't always get to see portrayed in the media and in the national discourse and images of what black women are. There are only a few tropes that were allowed: the angry black woman and the bad black girl and
the strong, mammy-ish
and sisterhood
black
in
woman.
terms of women and girls not being able to get along, right? But she covered all of that in like an hour.
And hair.
And hair.
And she covered black hair.
She did cover black hair.
It was
amazing.
beautiful. So it was great.
And so now you had to talk back after.
Yeah.
Now I saw Harry Droz nodding his head. Now you're not a black woman, you weren't a black girl, but tell me
Right.
what you were nodding your head about, Harry.
Something about double dutch.
Well, not just the double dutch, the hand games Marquisha was talking about.
And her point was that it wasn't just girls.
It's not just girls. It's part of life when you live in a minority community. It's just we learned how to play games.
You're talking now about Bed-Stuy. You grew up in
It's not
Bed-Stuy.
just, I'm sure it wasn't just Bed-Stuy, but
It's pretty universal.
it's pretty universal. And the reality of it is we didn't have ballparks. We didn't have, the luxury that people with money have. So you had the girls out there playing double dutch, playing all different types of games, and the guys would go out there and play stickball, skelly, and different things. And I would jump into the double dutch too. Like I was telling Babs, I used to jump
we
in.
talking about it on Love Babs.
Yeah, I used to jump in, and for me, it was a way of getting to talk to the girls because they would want to help me.
That's like, come on, let me teach you this if you're not that good. You see? But I mean, it just brings back so many memories. Like I can just vividly remember being on my grandmother's stoops, and the girls would my aunts would jump in, like, because that was their childhood. So like this idea of like, these women who are like whooping your butt all summer is like they're gonna jump in and play with you. And they're like, "Yeah, I don't know what you do. Let me show you this." And they'll do a little song from their childhood that you didn't know, and they've got your grandmother's clothesline, these painful ropes that if you get hit, you're gonna end up with welts. But like these are like it was that evocative.
Yeah.
Like those memories, like you can smell summer when you watch something like this because it just brings back those
The
kinds of
But it's sad, they
girls
don't
in
have
my
that. They
neighborhood
hardly
used
have
to use
that
electrical
nowadays,
wire.
right?
No, they do. I see girls
Yeah.
still jumping.
Yeah, the girls in my neighborhood used to use electrical wire.
Yeah,
Now, if you used to get hit with that,
But you know what, as you guys are talking about this, the thoughts that are coming into my mind is, I grew up in the Hill. Originally when we first moved there, we were the only Puerto Rican family there. Then it was a lot of whites, but then it started becoming an African American neighborhood, and that's where then we couldn't really, because we weren't considered whites, and we definitely weren't considered black. And in school, they used to make us put other. When we used to fill out any application under white or black, we had to put other. But that being said, I remember since growing up in the African American neighborhood, the only ones that those became our friends, and so we wanted to dress and have our hair and everything like the African Americans did.
did you sit on somebody's stoop and let them cornrow your hair?
And now what I find very fascinating is that now the African Americans, with all this Hispanic influence coming in, a lot of them have also chosen a lot of the Spanish influence in them. So, and it only happens here in America.
Yeah, and at the Trombone Shorty concert, I was going to say concert.
That was
the
a costly
band-
music hall last Sunday night.
Yeah.
Yes,
That was
that
loud
was
and
amazing. And the band that opened for Trombone Shorty, I think it's the New Breed Brass Band. I told Babs, I was like, do you feel the salsa in that? Because New Orleans is a place much like Puerto Rico where there's an intersection of those influences, where there's European influences from the French, there's African influence from the slaves that were brought there, and there's Spanish influences because the Spanish owned Louisiana at one point. So at one point you heard like you were in a second line and then you were doing a salsa. You were like, what is this?
Yeah.
It was great.
It was amazing. This city is rich
It was
with
gumbo. I love
culture.
it.
You know, I'm
Yeah.
just loving thinking about that with all that's going on now in New Haven. Not only have the arts ideas with all these events where you watch something pretty high quality taking place and then talking about and thinking about how it affects your life and your community. And you have the College Street Music Hall, which is Samuel Hademan wrote this week in The Independent, is on fire. They had
Yeah,
5
it's
hot
such a
shows in
good
6
venue.
nights.
Yeah.
You know, Yale tried to stop for 12 years us opening
You know,
that
it's
theater
amazing
because
how
they didn't want
think about
non-Ivy
that.
League families coming to entertainment downtown. They couldn't control. And it got open. The Hart administration got around it, even though they'll never brag about it. And now you got the Schubert, which had the Motown musical this week, and the College Music Hall right across the street from each other in this hopping entertainment district. It also has music and people living there and restaurants. You have the Taft. It's quite a success story.
There were so many people downtown last night.
Oh yeah.
But you know what? Yes, it's quite a success story, but for the Latinos, it's not. Because if you really look at the venue, years ago, when the Arts of Ideas, they always made sure that they had on main stage a Hispanic, well-known artist.
Oh,
Like
I
they
feel
do
you.
tomorrow
I
night.
feel
Wait.
you. I feel
Tomorrow
you too.
night, it's a Mexican group is the headliner,
Concert.
the lead concert
Oh,
on
yeah.
Saturday night, the prime time of the whole week.
But I hear.
Wait
what
a second.
you're
Wait a
saying.
second. I want to hear what you have to say about that.
But you know what? I don't know them. They're not known to me.
Mm.
And
But
so
wait a second. Is
they
that
have-
fair, Norma?
but see-
Is that fair? I mean,
No.
there might be African American dancer wasn't known in the African American community. There might be a Jewish musician I didn't know about. The point is that, and now you have a Mexican group you didn't know about. Arts Ideas brings them all in, and we get to know them.
Because, you know, West Haven is having Julio Iglesias' son.
Yeah.
Right in New Haven, we kind of we
Um,
go outside the norm and the mainstream, but
But
that might be
but to her point,
yeah.
aside
have to
from arts
spend
and
some time
aside
branding.
from arts and ideas, which we know
the
brings in
Schubert
culture.
Theater
It's
But
a
the
white
Schubert-
oriented
The
downtown.
Schubert Theater,
doesn't bring
in and of
anything.
itself, they don't bring Latino stuff,
Nothing.
and they damn sure don't bring black stuff.
Well, wait, they got Motown this
Well, that's one thing out of how many things?
Yeah, white man.
Come on, Paul, white man. That Schubert has like 100 shows, and one is black. None are Latino. None are Asian. None are anything other than white. Which, okay, that's fine. It's not
And
fine.
it could be argued that Motown is something that white people like too. So,
Yeah.
like,
Motown's success was on-
accessible to them.
Motown's success was the crossover. I
Yeah.
mean,
Yeah.
Barry
Yeah.
Gordy knew
And you are
that
likely to
white
see as
people are
many
gonna
white
like
folks
that.
in there. You know.
How
But
was-
to their credit, I mean, lots of white people were at the thing we went to last night, and
Yeah,
that
there was
show
a lot
wasn't
of
about
them,
them at all.
What'd you think about Motown the musical? How was it?
I've seen it before.
I've seen it before, so I mean, you know, it's the story of, you know, it's a loose story on Barry Gordy, Diana Ross, and Smokey Robinson and what they built together to change the sound of music and the way music was created and supported and put out. That has never been done before, and it was done by black people. So
So how was it? Like I saw Dreamgirls, which was a fictionalized version, inspired by
by the
Motown.
Supremes, by it's the Diana Ross
Right.
Supremes.
How does this compare with that?
Well, this is everything. This is not just.
About a group.
It's about Smokey Robinson and the music that he wrote for all these.
Oh, right, he was a
Artists.
songwriter too.
You know,
amazing.
it was a piece about Marvin Gaye and Marvin Gaye's angst about, you know, where he wanted to be as an artist. He wanted to be Frank Sinatra. He wanted to cross over like that,
Sort of like Scott Joplin wanting to be a classical composer and
Yeah.
trying to slow down ragtime.
and couldn't quite cross over, you know, into that genre. So the Motown, the musical, captures the Temptations, Diana Ross and the Supremes, but all those artists, Smokey Robinson and his influence of writing songs for everybody.
Everybody.
I mean, everybody, and the Stevie Wonder influence and how Stevie Wonder came up in the Motown because he was a kid, he was a little kid, and how they were gonna like ditch him because they couldn't figure out hits for him. They were like, okay, he's like a little kid, you know? Can you imagine?
He turned out to be quite a
And he
songwriter.
turned out to be, you know, this extraordinarily talented, you know, icon, right?
And he also pushed the boundaries a
He
lot.
did. He did.
You know what gets me about Motown? When you go back, listen to that, right, brilliant songwriting like Smokey Robinson. There was also something about the arrangements. Those songs were so tight.
Oh yeah.
And they were perfect.
And
You
they
listen
had
to
a
Jackson
commitment to
5, the
that.
Jackson. They tell a story, and often it's sometimes a gutsy story like Love Child or something,
Yeah.
but it's so tight and
Yes.
universal.
Yes.
And that kind of discipline of to do it in 2 or 3 minutes and tell a whole
And
story.
musicianship.
Yeah,
I mean,
musicianship
that
and the
speaks to me.
writing.
Yes.
That is, I mean, in journalism too, that's kind of gone away a little bit. That kind of,
Yeah, that kind of writing you don't see too much.
and it's still, and it lasts. When we listen to it today, it's fresh.
Yeah.
And it's exciting.
So.
And then I love Babs. Listen Monday at Motown Mondays loves Bab and
That's
everything.
it.
I love how you talk about the music, when you talk about how they said nice things, God forbid, about black women back in the day. It made you feel positive.
There were real love songs to black women during the Motown.
You mean Love Lies?
Yeah, there was like.
Different show for
Well, anyway, you've been schooling me all day, and I appreciate it. I really love the lessons here. And thank you for joining us on Dateline New Haven. Thanks to the best pundits anywhere, and pundits who punditize and give opinions, and they tell us what you think, and they're not ashamed of it. Babs Rawls-Ivy, Marquisha Ricks, Norma Rodriguez-Reyes, and Harry Drost. And a shout out in Germany to
Yeah.
Joe Ugly,
I know
who's away
Joe's
for
happy.
2 weeks. We're looking forward to a safe return. Looking forward to a safe return. You know, that's a little touchy subject for those of the Hebraic background, but that's another day. Don't apologize. No need to apologize. We just don't like to hear it in the original German. We're hearing enough of it from Donald Trump. Yeah. Thanks for joining us today at Dateline New Haven. Thanks to the best pundits. We're going to take it out with the Afro-Semitic Experience performing I Wish I Knew How It Would Feel to Be Free from the group CD A Plea for Peace. Now, we know what it's like to be free. We just got to remember to book our flight. Book it all weekend long here and fly free with us at WNHH, New Haven's home for community radio.
That was nice.
Oh,
Talk about Puerto Rico.
that was a good talk about Puerto Rico. That really was good.
So is that our best show ever?
No,
No? There was so much substance.
I think all
We
our
got
shows
deep.
are like
Yeah,
best
we
shows
got
ever.
so deep on like Puerto